Hi everyone, I'm Molly. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to talk about 4 movies that I think do a great job of telling a cohesive story in just 2 frames. So the very first frame and the very last frame of the movie, when you compare them side by side, they just tell a really interesting story and they get the point that the film was trying to make across in just 2 images. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about 4 films, so let's get started. Fair warning, the following video may potentially contain spoilers if you have not seen these 4 films that I mentioned, so just bear that in mind when you're watching this video. The first movie that I want to talk about in this video is Lucy. Now this movie I rewatched recently and I absolutely love how this movie starts and how it ends. The end shot, just from like a visual perspective, I absolutely love. I think it's really cool. But if you compare the first scene and the last scene of Lucy, it tells a really interesting story, I think, about human evolution. So the first scene, we see an ape-like creature, which we later learn is the first human, Lucy. And the camera's kind of looking up at Lucy. It's in a natural environment, it's out in nature, and it's the first human. So it's kind of like the dawn of humanity. And then the last scene, we see a man sprawled out in an office chair, dead, covered in blood, and the camera's looking down at him. And to me, it represents like the death of this evolution of humanity, and the next evolution is starting. That's kind of how I interpret it. So yeah, Lucy is my first pick for this video. I think it does a really good job of taking the theme of the movie, which is basically human evolution and growth, and you could even say human consciousness, and it ties it together in 2 really interesting scenes. So the second movie that I want to bring up in this video is Lady Bird, and this is a movie that I really like. It's just a great film. I love how this movie ties in the first and the last scenes. So in the first scene of this film, we see Lady Bird lying in bed, facing her mother. Her eyes are closed. There's like a very kind of a warm, nurturing energy about the scene. It's just her and her mother lying peacefully on a bed together. And for those of you that haven't seen the movie, she's basically an angsty teen. She wants to be independent, move out, live her own life. And then at the end of the movie, we see the last scene where she's walking out of a church and her makeup is smudged. She looks kind of bedraggled, like she's been up all night. It's like the complete opposite. So in the first scene, she looks really peaceful and serene, and she's resting. In the last scene, she looks tired, unkept, like she's been awake the whole night, like she hasn't slept at all or gotten any rest. Also a notable difference between the 2 scenes. In the first one, she is with her mother, and in the last scene, she is calling her parents on her phone, but they don't answer, so she has to leave a voicemail. So she is essentially by herself, which is what she wanted at the start of the movie, but it's not quite how she expected it to be. And I think these 2 scenes, when compared side by side, really tell the story of this movie well. It's basically like a coming-of-age movie, growing up and wanting to be independent from your parents, but then once that independence is given to you, you kind of almost become nostalgic for what you used to have. I just really like how these 2 scenes do that. When you compare them side by side, they basically tell that story in just 2 scenes. Alright, the third movie that I want to bring up in this video is The Social Network. This movie is really interesting how it starts and ends. So the opening scene, we see Mark Zuckerberg sitting in a restaurant filled with people. He's on a date with a girl, and he's basically making the conversation essentially all about himself. You compare it to the last scene of the film where he is sitting alone at a desk, there's no one else around, and he is looking at the Facebook page of the same girl that he was on a date with in the first scene, and he keeps refreshing it to see if she's going to accept his friend request. And I think these 2 scenes compared side by side are really interesting in how they convey almost the distance that social media can create between people. So pre-Facebook, pre-fame, pre-notoriety, he is on a date, surrounded by people. And then post all of that and everything that he went through creating Facebook, he is very much by himself. I think it's also interesting how this last scene ends with the fact that I think it's something like Mark Zuckerberg is the youngest person to ever become a billionaire. And it's almost like he's so successful business-wise, But ultimately, comparing these two scenes, it's almost like he's the same person. Like you would think he would have changed a lot as a human going through all of that, but he's still thinking about the same girl. That part of him hasn't changed at all. But I just really liked how this movie started and ended and what you can interpret from that just through these two scenes. Alright, so the last movie that I want to talk about in this video is Ex Machina. Now for me, this one wins. This film does a fantastic job of connecting the first scene with the last scene. So in the first scene, you see a woman who is in a very glass, modern-looking office, and there's a lot of like blue artificial light in this scene too. And she's kind of looking down to the left. It looks like she's on a computer of some sort. And then you compare it to the last scene of the film where Ava, who we know is an AI, is seen at this crosswalk. There's still a lot of glass in this scene, but the lighting is totally different. It's warm, natural sunlight. She's kind of looking up and to the right, like the complete opposite direction of the first woman. It's like a totally different environment. The first scene is like humans in a very modern, technology-ridden world, and the last scene is a technological human being, an AI, in a very natural world. And it's a very interesting juxtaposition between these two scenes. They're essentially complete opposites, and even the women they're looking the opposite directions. I absolutely loved this comparison. I love films that do this. They take their first and last scenes and they just tie them together so well. When you compare these two scenes, I think it basically does what Ex Machina wants to do. It's very effective. It makes you think. It makes you question what it is to be human, and it makes you question the world as we know it. So Ex Machina, that's my fourth choice. Definitely wanted to talk about that movie in this video. Alright, so that is it for this video. I think I'm going to wrap up here. I already have a list of more movies I want to talk about going that I think do a great job, again, of tying in the beginning and the end scenes. Let me know down in the comments if there's any movies you want me to talk about, specifically relating to how they start and end and just comparing those two scenes. But yeah, these are 4 movies that I think do a great job of this, and like I said, probably there will be more to come, so stay tuned. As always, thanks for watching, you guys, and I will see you all next time.